until next time. December 2, 2025, it's year 4, day 282 since the full-scale invasion began. A warm welcome, I greet you. Back to the Daily Situation Report. The subscribers and channel members are increasing day by day, just like yesterday and the day before. Together, we give the channel the weight and reach we need to survive in this media world. Let's continue. Putin once again announces a buffer zone along the Ukrainian northern border. He wants to establish it to us here. Let's review the final 2 buffer zones. Here's the first. One is near Kharkiv. You can see the city here in the bottom left of the image. And all of this is within this red dashed area. This was actually supposed to be part of the last buffer zone. So all the way down here at the Siversky Donetsk River, including Kharkiv, and of course also a connection here to the rest of the Eastern Front, so that they could secure the entire arc for themselves. That was the Russians' intention. Why did they want that? Quite simply because every time the Russians attacked a Ukrainian city, the Ukrainians would usually fire multiple rocket launchers into Belgorod, often using other artillery weapons as well, as a form of retaliation. The Russians wanted to prevent that by creating a buffer zone here, which would force the Ukrainian artillery to be moved much further back into the rear, so far back that it would be outside the range of Russian drones, which at that time was about 20 kilometers, and also still out of range to be able to hit Belgorod. They didn't manage to do all of that. The only thing they managed to do was to capture this group of villages here, and also the north of Vozhansk, more or less. The north is everything above this green dashed line here. Much of this area remains under Ukrainian control, but fighting continues. The second buffer zone is just a bit further to the west, up here. It's the same situation there. They wanted to capture the area along the red dashed line, including Sumy. This happened because Ukrainians captured an area nearly as large as Berlin at that time. You might still remember this huge expansion we could see here when the Ukrainians advanced into the Kursk region. Afterward, the North Koreans helped push them back. The Russians used the momentum to capture the red-marked areas, including some blue-marked regions that Ukrainians had previously recaptured. But since then, this section of the front has also been more or less static, just like the rest of the front. So they had big ambitions, but in both cases, they didn't really get very far. I think a third buffer zone will suffer the same fate as the first 2. All in all, you can roughly estimate that in the last 2 attempts at a buffer zone, there were about 50,000 to 60,000 casualties. There are many unreported cases on the Russian side, especially involving Vovchansk. The battles caused the highest losses for both buffer zones. Here, for the first time, we saw the Russians sending disabled soldiers back into the attack, sending people with crutches into battle. And how there were a lot of complaints piling up here that their equipment was taken away and they were basically sent into battle as very light infantry. They did this to move faster and, as they said, evade Ukrainian drones, which led to high losses. It's possible that Putin also misspoke and actually doesn't mean creating a new zone, but simply expanding the previous 2 zones. But Ukrainian units are already stationed here, and they've been digging themselves in for the past few years. So it's once again a rather costly undertaking if they try to expand further here. Russian aviation remains under pressure. Official data shows a sharp rise in serious incidents. 8 accidents with 12 deaths in 2023, and 17 accidents with 37 deaths in 2024. And in 2025 alone, there have already been more than 4 accidents with 53 fatalities. And here, we're really talking about accidents. Pilot errors, technical failures, and missing spare parts that hinder maintenance all contribute to these accidents. Another cause mentioned is insufficient training and gaps in documentation, especially focusing on regional airlines. Cargo aviation faces a dramatic situation, with operational cargo planes reduced by half since the war began. Currently, only about 28 aircraft are flying around all of Russia. These are mostly older Ilyushin, 76s. A similar number are grounded due to a lack of spare parts, which is a result of the sanctions. This shortage is now clearly noticeable again. The cargo volume has dropped to less than a fifth of its previous levels. Production of new models like the Aviation 112 and Aviation 212 is minimal, and the modernized Aviation 76 continues to have issues. To avoid collapse, the industry is urgently calling for action. An extension of the fuselage and engine service life is planned, faster approvals, and, of course, subsidies of up to 10 billion rubles per year, which the Russian state currently does not have. Also from Bunsolnizina winter format feet, including the vote on Ukraine military aid. The Trump administration didn't inform Berlin ahead of suspending certain arms deliveries. Until recently, there was a 24/7 exchange with United States contacts. Now the connection has been cut off, according to our general. This makes short-term coordination, situation assessments, and prioritization of deliveries more difficult. And exactly that in a phase when Kiev is relying on predictable support. Look, the Russians have managed to do it. They're in Pokrovsk and holding up their flag. With that, they were able to capture the city. And this time for real, because they've already claimed 10 times before that they had captured the city. Or maybe not again. Let's just take a look at the corresponding video. If the Russians put even half as much effort into winning the war, they would have surely been able to end the so-called special operation a long time ago. I also firmly believe Russia would have won the war in 2 months if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot so often. And that's their own fault. That was also a great advantage for Ukrainians early in the war, when military support was weaker than it is now. This is still not enough. Fortunately for the Ukrainians, their strengths lie more in video editing and spreading wild false reports than in their abilities on the battlefield. But that's exactly what you have me for. Take a look at the situation map. Let's move on to Pokrovsk. So we'll leave the far north with the 2 buffer zones here, in an area where there are a lot of subunits on both sides and where heavy fighting is still going on. We have 3 actual flag locations on the Russian side here. Those are the ones marked with the blue pins. So basically here, here, and here. I've now marked the top 2 as Russian dominated. A flag like that wouldn't stand there for more than a few hours if the Russians weren't there anymore, right? As I mentioned, the current flag reports are at the 3 blue pins shown here. And I can also give you the Warren Tactic seal of approval for this report. Not for what you saw earlier in the video. What I unfortunately can't understand, or rather what I don't even want to understand, is why so many channels, especially on YouTube, that spread such false reports every day, have such a large reach and gain so many subscribers daily. And we're talking about people who have 800,000 or 900,000 subscribers and get 2,000 or 3,000 more every day. It almost seems as if the pro-Russian camp is more willing to subscribe or to give their attention to things they want to hear instead of those that are actually happening. But as I said, I don't like repeating myself, but the Russian side is far superior, especially when it comes to the media war and also the support in this media war compared to the others. In the Lyman sector, a Russian assault group is attacking the 66 Teach's tank crews positions in dense fog using motorcycles. Mechanized brigade to advance. The Ukrainian defenders spotted the approach in time and stopped the advance with openly laid mines and an ambush position. 12 soldiers on motorcycles were taken out and the rest had to retreat. The Russians almost always use fog or bad weather to advance, since drones often can't be used in such conditions. But that's why they're still the queen of the battlefield, and that's the infantry. You can watch the full video, as always, on my Telegram channel. Off the Turkish coast, the Russian freighter Volga II had to deal with a drone attack, as it was reported about 130 kilometers from shore. No one was hurt. The ship is sailing to Sinop port on its own and is not sinking. It's unclear who carried out the attack. Even regarding the route, there are conflicting reports. The Turkish Maritime Authority says the route was from Russia to Georgia, but the Treveka agency says it was heading to Mersin. Ankara stated that all relevant parties, including the Ukrainian authorities, have been informed and also warned that attacks on merchant ships in the Black Sea are unacceptable. The incident is part of a series of Ukrainian naval drone operations against sanctioned tankers, with which Kiev aims to increase pressure on the Russian oil sector. The base of the Akhmat regiment in Chechnya was hit again. It was attacked just last month. And I also said that they would now have to move the air defense there to protect the prestigious target. Apparently, they didn't follow up on that. Toward the end, we'll listen to a short quote from Trump. "I think Russia wants this to be over. I think there's a good chance we can reach an agreement," said Trump. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Putin has ordered Russian troops in Ukraine to be fully equipped for winter combat operations. Let that sink in. It's already clear to us that Trump doesn't have a clear picture of the situation and that the Russians don't want to end the war, or at least not under different conditions. I'm much more interested in how they plan to equip nearly 1 million soldiers adequately for the winter. Here's another good quote from Peskov. "Russia is open to peace talks, but only after achieving all the special operations objectives. Imagine if Hitler claimed he was open to peace talks, but only after achieving all the war's goals." A bit confused, but at least honest from him. Special thanks go to the ALGOR crew channel members, and especially to Lieutenant Colonel Renike. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next report.